Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to an episode of Outside the Panels, and I have got an absolute treat coming up next. You say never meet your heroes, and I met this guy a few years ago in a thought bubble before COVID. That's how long ago it was. And I've been a fan of his work from all the way back to Doctor Who. Yes, Doctor Who. I'm British, get with it. Up to now, I've seen some of his DC work, his Marvel work, his indie work. To me, this is a real treat, and I am so looking forward to chatting with him. It is the ultra talented. It's Mr. Paul Cornell. Paul,
wow.
How's it going, sir?
I'm fine. It's hard to live up to that introduction, I must say. I feel a little overwhelmed.
Really? I genuinely, when this came through my desk as would you like to interview Paul Cornell, I was like, would I like to interview? Are you crazy? Of course I'd like to interview him. You know, we met a couple of years back before COVID at a thought bubble before it moved. You won't remember me. It's fine. I am just another fanboy back then. What's it? Thought bubble. Tell people what Thought Bubble's like. It's the premier UK con, right?
It is. It's my favourite. It's got such a lovely atmosphere. It's all about the comics, from top to bottom. It's the best social centre, the best deal making centre, and it's the only convention I take a table, because I like to. It's not so much about the selling, because I sell most of my year's complimentary copies, and I don't really have anything left, and I have to, actually not fail to sell for the rest of the year in order to keep them for Thought Bubble. But it's about meeting that amazing audience who are there. You get people just coming up to your table and going, "So, what have you got?" They just want to see new comics, and that's so beautiful. And just me and Elizabeth Miles, who I table with, we spend the whole weekend just meeting new people, and it's absolutely wonderful.
It's great because the crowd at Thought Bubble, you go to these kind of like themed kind of cons where it's movies or film or whatever. You go to Thought Bubble, and it's just people want to read comics across the board. It doesn't have to be superhero comics, doesn't have to be sci-fi, doesn't have to be indie, although admittedly there is a shed load of indie. It's just people enjoying comics, and that's great, right?
Yeah, and the mid-con party, the social scene, it's so nice.
Well, I didn't get to stay for the social party. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
And Harrogate is a lovely place to hold it in.
It's a pain to drive to, I can tell you that. Oh man, my sat nav took me across all these country roads. I was going to see Farmer Giles. Not thought anyway. We're here to discuss a project you've got going on. You have a new book kicking around. It's called Con and On.
Yep.
So tell us about the premise. First of all, if it's about comic cons, is Thought Bubble in there? And more importantly, am I in there?
It's 30 or 40 years in the life of an enormous American comics convention. And it's we follow a whole bunch of different people across those decades, and it's about how the industry changes and where comics takes all those people across that time. And it's my big Robert Altman movie with a sprawling cast. And it's a satire about the industry that's got loads of true anecdotes in there, and it's stuff that professionals tell each other in the bar, or there's some stuff in there that's happened to me. And it's kind of a social history of the big comic cons, down to the people that pick up the litter and the security, and one of the things I really like is how different it was even just a few years ago. In the very first issue, our two leads are going, it might take us a whole half an hour to get in there and buy our tickets. And There's an issue of Iron Man in the 70s where he goes to San Diego Comic Con. And
Really?
it is a line of seven fans at a table, maybe paying their money with somebody with a pencil, and there's a tea urn, and it's
I can't complain. I get complimentaries to thought bubbles, so I was the way it worked is the last time I went. My wife stood at the end of the queue, and I went down to get our tickets. And the whole line was outside, and I texted her saying, "I've got the tickets. I'm at the front." And she's walking down, and everyone was like giving the daggers. It was unbelievable.
oh yeah.
The thing that's changed, I think, the most over recent years, or in Comic Cons, is of course cosplay. That's become such a huge attraction now.
Yeah,
I hope
and that's changed.
Yeah,
that we're with the masqueraders at one point, and those extraordinary areas outside the big comic conventions where masqueraders, religious protesters, and the homeless mingle, and it's well, San Diego, which is the one I've had most experience for, though this, of course, is a satirical rendition of many different Comic Cons put together.
Yeah. Not affiliated to any one particular Southern Californian one at all. Not at all. No.
The San Diego, the one that I know best, I will do on average 19 meetings. I did 19 last year across the few days of the convention. I'm literally running from place to place, and there's an anecdote in here that actually happened to me. So I thought, oh God, I'll just have it be me. I'll be in the comic.
Yeah.
And where basically I didn't know what that cafe was before I went to it, and it's a cat cafe, and I'm profoundly allergic, and I so wanted the meeting, I took it anyway, and with ridiculous results. But it's that sort of thing. It's the stuff that it's the war stories. It's the stuff people tell each other, and
things in the trenches.
Yeah, and we've got an actor who when his agent says to him, now it's a television panel at a comics convention, so don't worry if nobody shows up. And in the first issue back 30 years ago, and his career goes upwards and then just crashes.
Yeah,
and it's about him finding something else to do. And a lot of this is about the roller coaster of success in comics and in associated fields. And one of our heroes gets successful really quickly, and then it all falls apart. And one has to really fight for it all the way across to the final issue. And there's life and death in here. One of the major characters doesn't make it to the end.
Oh no!
Yeah, there's because of course it's deep time. There's there's two. My favorite characters are probably the two dealers who seem immortal, because it's always those two, and they're always they always show up, and they always have the same dialogue until right at the end. One of them says to the other, "This is my last year," and the other one says, "Yeah, me too." And because that's always what dealers are saying.
I've been to comic marts like that for sure.
Yeah, and so the two central journeys, Eddie and Deja, are the relatively easy path of a young white dude who just can elbow his way in and then doesn't know what to do with it and doesn't make the most of his opportunities, and the harder path of a young black cartoonist who can't find any shoulders to stand on, and goes through some of the awful stuff that happens to people in our industry. And they nevertheless hold together just about. They distantly orbit each other and comment on each other's situation. And there's I should talk about the three British dudes.
All right, that's good. Let's have Bob in comics. Go for it.
At the start, which is the moment of the British invasion, the first British first British comic creators to show up in the States and work on American titles. I have three British comic creators. There's a dapper gentleman in a suit and tie. There's a cosmic explorer, and there's a wild man who's drunk all the time. And I think that covers everybody. I don't.
we'll put names to faces after the pod.
I think we could put about 7 names to each of them. And,
it's funny enough, the dapper one and the cosmic one could be the same person.
But from time to time, absolutely.
So this is so courtesy of. Let me give some credit where credit's due. Thepopverse.com. You can check this out. You get 20 pages from Ahoy Comics. The first issue. You can have a look through that.
Basically, you get to read the first issue because the collected edition is out now, and so we've put the first issue out there for free, basically.
What's it like working with Ahoy? Because I've interviewed Tom Payer and a couple of other people from Ahoy, and they love it. They think it's great, and the quality of the comics is spot on.
They are the loveliest. I mean, they are the nicest comic company I've ever worked for. I mean, some might say that's a low hurdle to jump, but no, this lot are lovely. I love the fact that they are after dark comedy. And that's not something you get very much in comics, and they've clearly found a niche, a market for it. Their Project Cryptid, their funny cryptozoological stories, is now an ongoing. They've got their first, non-mini series going.
Yeah,
and it's nice to know that somebody's out there finding a new niche to prosper in that's not superheroes.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would have thought dark humor. Satirical dark humor is such a British thing, though. So, were you worried about how the humor would translate? Because irony and all that sort of stuff, not exactly
really.
Universal as sarcasm.
I mean, honestly, we say that irony is ours, but look at American sitcoms, and they're full of irony. I mean. The modern American sitcom, Frasier and Curb Your Enthusiasm, they know irony, and I think it takes them longer to get to the dark stuff, but they know it's there. They just want to fight it off a bit longer. And we kind of sometimes wallow. I passed an old man coming the other way the other day in my walk in my little country town. And we always say hello to each other in this town. And I said to him, "Oh, look, weather's getting so nice now." And he said, "Oh, it'll turn bad again."
Yes, ER is just around the corner.
Yeah. But no, I love what Ahoy do, and I think they're incredibly valuable to have. And Tom Payer is one of the nicest men in the world.
Absolutely, I've interviewed him a couple of times, and what an absolute gentleman! What an absolute gentleman! You've worked across the board, though. The book Conan On is equally potentially about the different publishers as well. These are the kind of the stopgaps that fans like me will go and say, "Wait, get in!" It's a name.
We've got a different big two.
Oh, excellent.
And there's various figures who are again types, people you'll meet several of across the industry. And there's one, actually, there's a positive stereotype in one of them who sits Eddie down at one point and says, the comics company is not your mum and dad. Though you won't get an apprenticeship here, you won't be helped to learn your craft. They just want to see what you've got, and you live and die now based on that.
Wow.
And it's really good advice, and I wish I'd paid attention to it back in the day. And so there are positive types as well as negative types in here.
So you've worked across the aisles. You've worked across.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked at Marvel, DC. You've worked on British comics. You've worked on indie books. How did you manage to? How did you manage to kind of, I suppose, merge those sort of aspects together to give you the kind of supporting cast that when we read the book, we'll be able to put two and two together and say, we know that's really.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's stuff about the beginnings of indie comic hugeness.
Okay.
And where suddenly in the 90s, everyday people can name a few comics creators.
Yeah.
And there's also stuff about what kind, and what kind of comics prosper and what your art style needed to be, and
yes,
yeah, and it's I do think that just about all comic life is in here, and I think it reads really well in trade, because I think the leaps between issues, because there's 7 or 8 years between each issue, in monthly editions, I think got in the way of people's enjoyment. But as a single novel, I think it works, and we grow up with two characters who we first meet as toddlers.
Okay.
And it's just these lifetimes in comics that I'm really interested in. I think there are creators, us being around at the same time as Ramona Fradon, that our lives cross over with hers, and that hers stretches back into, and the way that our industry commemorates is a beautiful thing. And I'm a subscriber to Back Issue magazine, where I hope one day to be remembered in a similar magazine.
Well, I think you're remembered for a whole load of things, Paul, to be honest. I mean that as a compliment, as we'll get to later in the show. The book, I'm going to say this, and please don't take offense at it, but you've been around the block a few times. So is the book as much reflective of you as much as the things that you've observed and experienced as that kind of in the trenches?
Oh yeah. I mean,
you look back at the odd pages and think, man, I can't remember. Oh, Mac, I can remember when this was like this. Oh, why is it had to change from a simple? Why do you have to give it the comic code, and why is Batman super violent now and all that sort of stuff?
No. I never look back with fondness. I always think the next thing's going to be better. I think nostalgia is terrifying. I think it's the waiting room for death.
Really?
Seriously.
It's not that's not the first time I've heard that recently.
Yeah.
I've heard that nostalgia plays with your mind so much that you forget to recognize what's going on now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see too many people succumb to it. When that word was first invented, it was a disease.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's troops coming back from the 100 Years' War, or perhaps some other war after that. But the doctors start writing of how this horrifying thing called nostalgia, where they just want to get home and they miss the olden days, and I feel the same way about it. Kind of, it's sort of become over time this thing we've made into a nice thing. Anyway. But so it's quite a pointed look at the past. I mean, there are little moments of there's a lovely old SF writer who commemorates the moment when this sort of big convention split off from science fiction conventions, and can remember that moment. It's but no, my attitude towards the past, especially as expressed in this, is quite quite sharp.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
Was that the question? I think I
Oh, no,
talked
it's
and
fine.
talked.
No, it's fine. No, it's perfect.
Okay.
It's perfect. Good answer. Well done. I find the thing that I find about Thorble that you mentioned already, that it's about the comics. I've got so many kind of like little marts or comic cons, and it seems to be you go there and you say, "Excuse me, is anyone selling comic books?" And I look at you and say, "Comic books? What are you talking about? Comic books?" And you talk to some guy dressed as the Joker and Harley Quinn's bopping around somewhere. Like, how can you be dressed like that if you're not letting me buy comic books? So.
At a Comic-Con a British Comic-Con last year, a coffee seller actually said to me unironically, "Oh, I didn't think they'd be selling comics at a Comic-Con." and absolutely meant it.
Absolutely meant it. Oh my god. All right, on that bombshell, we'll take a quick break for one of our other shows. Where shall we go? I'll tell you what, we'll check out this one. It's time for a crisis. There you have it. One of our loudest adverts ever is Crisis in the Toyverse with Bobo. Check it out for all your figure news. He's going through a batch of McFarlane toy stuff at the moment. Yes, he takes them out of the box. Yes, he plays with them. Don't yell at me. It's his collection, not mine. Thank you. On that note. Before we move on to our next topic, the book, Conan On, it's out now, right? It came out March 27th.
Yeah.
Cool. So you'll be able to get that anywhere you can buy comic books from. So that's your local.
And
in the UK, it'll be Forbidden Planet and whatnot, and where not.
And I really should mention my wonderful artist on that, Marika Cresta, who hasn't been. I haven't. It would be terribly a mission on my part. Who really got the atmosphere of what a Comic-Con is like, and the character designs are very good. And so I just wanted to give her due credit.
By all means, comic books are a collaborative affair. So there you go. The link there you can see on the page links to Paul's Tree of Success, so you can be able to check all the Twitters and Facebooks and order the books and go from there. If you can't find it in your local comic book store, it is out, so you'll be able to go to your local Waterstones and get it ordered. It's also available on, I don't want to say this, but it's also available on Amazon. Go to the comic book store first, though. There you go. A multi-talented man. You have another thing going on right now, correct?
Yes. Nessie. Who killed Nessie?
Killed Nessie?
A cryptozoological, cozy comedy, graphic novel, crowdfunder murder mystery. It's Joe Hill just saw this on Blue Sky and said it's like you dreamed up a comic just for me. And I said, can I use that, Joe? And and he said, sure, if you send me a copy. And,
fair enough.
And as you can see, it's going really pretty well. And it's by me and Rachel Smith, the great cartoonist who does Nap Comics with an X. And which is just amazing autobiographical, cute comics about her being a new mum. And this is basically, there's an annual convention of cryptids, of mysterious beasts like the Yeti and Bigfoot. and they all get together every year at a hotel in the Great Lakes with the Kraken and the lake monsters out the back. And fairies at the bottom of the garden, and the humans of the hotel leave, but they've got to leave somebody. So they leave intern Leslie Grockle, who doesn't know what's going on or what any of this is. And then in the middle of, but she thinks, I'll let them get on with their convention, whoever they are. Then in the middle of the night, she's woken up by the Beast of Bodmin Moor, Bob, who's a talking cat, who says to her, who says to her that the Loch Ness Monster has been murdered, and because they don't trust each other, she's the only being that they trust to solve the mystery.
Okay.
And so it's the intern has to solve the murder of the Loch Ness Monster, and she's just got over a breakup with a very poetic sort who thought she didn't believe enough, that she had a very too rational a brain, and now she has to use this rational brain to solve this mystery amongst creatures that she previously did not believe existed. So the line we have is, you may not believe in us, but we believe in you.
Oh, bless. Nice.
And Rachel draws the most wonderful grumpy fairies, and there's a wonderfully grumpy unicorn on that cover as well. And I just we were talking, and I suddenly had this vision of a floor with the chalk outline of the dead Nessie on it. And,
it's class. It's brilliant. Love it. It's on Zoop. You can see the links there. You're offering a digital and a soft cover. Do you have a preference, Paul, over digital or hard copy? Do you mind?
Do you know, I was a digital comics only guy for several years until Comixology changed.
Oh.
And then I became more of a collector as well, and started treating my legacy to my son in terms of the collection a bit more seriously. So I've swung towards physical copies again. But I've still got a ton of digital comics, and for a time there were for a time there, a Wednesday popping down to my local coffee shop with an iPad full of digital comics was my idea of a great day.
Cool. Sounds brilliant.
So I there are certain runs I've still only got on digital, and but no, and honestly, however you want to buy Nessie is fine by us. And we've also got some lovely backer rewards and stretch goals. We've got you can get some original artwork from Rachel. You can get I had to find out what this was, a remarked book plate, which is where she won't just sign it, but Rachel will draw a little doodle for you on your book plate. And we've got a book plate that's going to look like the hotel register.
All right.
And if you really want to splash out, you can come and hang out with me and Rachel as she draws. And we've already got one person who's up for that. And I don't know what I'll be doing meanwhile. I'll just be look at that drawing. Shit, look at that. That's great. Like, is she's drawing all right? Yeah. But
man. It reminds me when me and my brother tried to do a comic book years ago, and he was the artist. I wrote like the first issue down, and I gave him the first issue, and he starts drawing and stuff. And of course, art takes longer than words.
Yeah.
So whilst he's drawing, I'm playing video games. I could see the sense of frustration in his eyes. We didn't get past page 3. I was
because you've swiftly discovered the relationship between writer and artist.
By the time you've drawn one page, I can write 2 issues or whatever. It's cool. It's cool. How do you stay fresh? Because as I mentioned before, you've had a long career. You've got Conan on, and you've got Who Killed Nessie. How do you stay fresh within an ever-changing marketplace? Well, I'm going to say ever-changing. I'm not sure that's strictly true, because the majority of readers now are older readers.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, Laura Olympus. I mean, we've there's a whole the most popular comics now are young comics.
Well,
And
again, I kind of, I don't want to argue with an expert, but when I was a kid, same as when you were a kid, I didn't need young comics. I could just go and buy a comic book, and that was it. It was a comic, and I don't need it. I don't need a simplified version of Batman. I've got Batman.
I just mean that young people have their comics, and it's sorry, what am I talking about?
Staying fresh.
Staying fresh. Yeah, I think there's two things here. I think being in conversation with one genre, as they call it, keeping up with what everybody else is doing and positioning yourself. And you know how you go into a movie and you come out going, "Oh, well, I should have done this, and they should have done that," and having an argument with the movie. That's being in conversation with one genre. That's the negative version of it. Or there is, oh my goodness, that was great. I want to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. There's knowing what's out there now and reacting to it. And also, I'm hungry. I'm,
you know, that's probably the most honest answer I've ever heard.
Well, I mean, not physically hungry. I mean, I've just had my dinner, but I'm not satisfied. I don't feel the need to sit on my laurels at any point soon. I've still got a point to prove, and that's really important too, because you've got to have the energy to keep going. And do you know Bruce Springsteen's "Dancing in the Dark" is actually a freelancer song? It's
I find "Dancing in the Dark" annoyingly poppy, but when you listen to the lyrics, it is massively dark and depressing.
Well, he was challenged by his manager to go write a hit single for the album they didn't think had any hit singles, which was Born on the USA.
Yeah, definitely.
And this, I think, is really a lesson for freelancers. He thought, right, hit single, I'll write the most obvious thing possible. I get up in the morning. But then he thought, oh, but that's not true. I'm currently working on an album with musicians and we record at night. So he crossed it out and wrote, I get up in the evening. And it went, I ain't got nothing to say. I'm sitting here trying to write this book.
Yeah.
And it's just true. He tried to write something facile and he couldn't. And he wrote something true. And that's why it connects. Emotional content, as Bruce Lee called it. The idea that if you mean it, people get that.
Cool.
People notice. And so I think that still meaning it. They say you've got to stay hungry. I'm just about starving tonight, is what the lyric says in there.
Yeah, that's a good call. It's a good call. I get that.
Yeah, and so it's that. It's the urge to keep on expressing oneself.
I'm a huge Springsteen fan, so
yeah.
So I get that. I do love the acoustic version of "Dancing in the Dark." Just him and the guitar, just absolutely so much better than the Monica from Friends version.
I saw him play Cardiff.
All right,
and most incredible gig. He realized 3 or 4 songs in that the audience weren't connecting. That it was a perfectly enjoyable gig, but it was not enough. Yeah. And so they did the thing the E Street Band can. They the roadies went around pulling up the set lists off the stage, and he made it up song by song. He got the audience, all these Welsh people singing "The River."
I love that song.
And he, slowed it down and talked to them and connected and made sure that it was a special concert for a particular place. Cool. And then he kept choosing what the next number would be. And by the end of it, my goodness, I have never been in a reaction like that. And that's what only he can do. That's the skill set, Sorry, we're talking about Springsteen.
I'll talk Springsteen. Yeah. Cows come home. I'm all about Springsteen. I love the guy. I have so many of his albums. I've got his old stuff. I break my heart every time I listen to Moonlight Motel off one of his recent albums,
Oh.
primarily because I don't. It's a bit morbid, but I'll go with it. There's a hotel near me, and it's a cheap hotel. You go there for like a cheap night out sort of thing. And we got married there. My wife and I got married there. We've stayed there. In their boat. It was a nice wedding. Should change the carpet. When my wife's mum died, we had the wake there, and the lines about how this hotel means so much to the character in the song. All these kind of things have happened. It just resonates so much with me. And then the last line, how he pours out a shot in the parking lot to the Moonlight Motel, it gets me every time. I'm like, so I get it. Springsteen is a master when it comes to lyrics. So
and you can bet that he doesn't go home and think to himself, "Oh, I've done it all. It's I'm satisfied. I have nothing more to say because it's all been a complete no." He goes home and kicks himself for what he missed, and like Arthur Miller woke up in the morning beside Marilyn Monroe and we think bloody Shakespeare.
It's funny. We talk about Springsteen, and we're kind of like talking about with how you stay fresh. Springsteen's audience, the majority of it has matured with him. Right, he's not going to pick up, the teeny boppers that are going to get his. Do you feel that then translates to comic book writers and creators who've been around, like yourself, who have got such a huge fan base through your various works? I mean, we talk about fan base.
It gets harder. It gets harder as you get older because younger creators have come along who are more closely in touch with the kids. I mean, I would love to be able to still talk to a young audience, and indeed, I've just made my first venture, which you'll hear about sometime soon, in purely children's comics because I wanted to write something for my son, but it's risky. You're gonna make a fool of yourself if you get that wrong.
Yeah, so there's so many writers that do that.
Yeah. So you gotta know what you can do and what you can't.
And this then reflects on Con and On, because you have to have been to Comic Cons to have seen this progression that you see throughout the book.
I think it's got a wider application, though. There's stories here about there's stories here that kind of apply to any creative soul, and I think it explains itself as it goes as well.
Cool.
I mean, that's always the risk. But anyway, Nessie Zoop. If you Google Nessie and Zoop with a P, you will find our website. There's 5 pages of lovely Rachel Smith art on there. There's fairies eating Yeti flavored crisps. All that.
There you go. It's there with a spelling edit from me going wrong. Let me just change that because I'm a poor typist. My typist sucks.
And the other thing that's happening right now is I've been nominated for a Hugo Award.
Congratulations!
There's a book of mine called The Witches of World War II with Valeria Berzo is on the shortlist for the Hugo Award for Best Graphic Story this year. We're up against Wonder Woman Historia, so we need all the luck we can get. But it's really nice. It's Glasgow World Science Fiction Convention, so I'll be there. And
cool. Let me see if I can get some press tickets for that one. Let me just write that down.
No, everybody pays to go to a Worldcon. The only people who don't pay are the 4 or 5 guests of honor from the science fiction world. And it's a socialist enterprise.
Okay, fair enough.
George R.R. Martin will be paying for his ticket.
Okay,
and
cool.
And actually he loves that. He's a huge supporter of the whole Worldcon thing. But and he tried for the longest time to still queue for his ticket. until it got physically impossible for him to do so because people would sort of mill around him. But yeah, it's a very egalitarian organization, and I love it.
So, with you on the pod, Paul, I cannot let this moment pass. People will yell at me. They'll be like, Machine, you've had Paul Cornell on the show. Why did you not talk about the blue box?
Oh, yes.
Room? Now, this has to be one of my favorite Doctor Who books of all time. And when it got translated to a TV show, my wife's a massive Doctor Who fan, across all the different regenerations. She was like, "Oh, this story's really good." I'm like, "Yeah, it's based on a book." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's based on a book by Paul Cornell." She's like, "Is it?" I was like, "Yeah, pretty much." And she couldn't believe it. She was like this. So, Paul, Doctor Who, it's probably for a lot of people the thing that you are probably most known for, and that's fair. That's a fair shout. What is it that makes Doctor Who so quintessentially British and yet acceptable around the world?
Oh, I mean, goodness, define Britishness. It's I think it has a sense of panto. It's got it's the only thing that collides horror with pantomime.
Okay.
And it's very different to all of its peers now, certainly, in that it's the only one that's not a cult show. This is what was it? Third biggest show on Christmas Day last year.
Longest running science fiction show in history.
Yeah, I think Star Trek in all its forms might be, if it depends if you stack them up back to back or anyway. But what it is a mainstream show. It's a show regular people in the street watch and talk about. And that's just not true of even the X-Files at its height.
Everyone knows who the TARDIS is. Everyone knows what a TARDIS is. Everyone knows what a Dalek looks like. Everyone knows time and space, and everyone has their doctor.
And it's written. It's written as a mainstream show as well, and that makes it very different. So I think that's perhaps the secret of its success, that it's always had an eye on populism, in the nicest sense of the word. That Russell especially is very good at this. What will people actually be doing as they watch this? Let's tell them what this thing is about at the top. Let's tell them 10 minutes in when they've got their dinner. Let's remind them again 10 minutes later when they're all settled down. And he's the master of stuff that gets shown in a slot where people will actually be watching it.
Were you happy? Sorry, I interrupted. Were you happy with how human nature transferred over onto TV? I remember reading the book, and it was a cricket ball that had the essence of the Doctor in, and it got used in a cricket match, and therefore went missing for a while. And that was the main sort of thrust of how do you get his presence back when the cricket balls.
Genius idea of Julie Gardner to turn it into the fob watch. Just because you can see when it's open, you can see when it's closed. I was blown away by it. I remember attending the read through, and people were crying at the read through. I was like, I'm sitting on top of a powder keg here. This is going to be huge.
It was. The book was fantastic. The show was brilliant. So the cast, the
the way that we cast Game of Thrones, that they picked almost exclusively from us. The wonderful direction, Charles Palmer, lots of effects in camera. So when Son of Mine is psychically contacting his peers, that's just the actor looking straight at the camera and having a green light bathed on him. And wonderful Harry Lloyd. And that spacecraft lights descending into the forest is actually an enormous lighting rig being lowered from a crane. It's really there. And I think you can tell.
The physical effects work, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm immensely proud of it and fond of it, and the contributions of everyone else. I mean, there's the scene everybody quotes is a Russell scene. He's at the center of everything, and that speech. He wrote that at the last minute because we lost a scene on a rugby field because it was just a morass of mud, and it's the bit everybody loves. But I do try to give off credit where it's due. It's I can't take ownership of that.
No.
And but it's wonderful. My goodness, isn't Freema a Gaiman just amazing?
Brilliant. And the unrequited love, the kind
Yeah.
of the Doctor doesn't want to be that person, the kind of the moral compass that he kind of has to thread. You can still see the Doctor sensibility in him.
Bones in the hand. She learned all of them so they could do it in one take, looking at her if required.
Oh man, she's great. She's great.
Yeah.
I've cried twice at Doctor Who. I've cried twice. One was Goodbye My Sarah Jane in School Reunion, because I remember Sarah Jane the first time around, and I watched it recently with my wife again about 2 nights ago, and I'm still have tears as the TARDIS disappears and K9's there for her. And it still gets me. And of course, the second part of Human Nature, when it just and the thing that makes it so impactful is at one point you're seeing the Doctor all frail. He's John Smith. He doesn't want to go back. I want this life. I want it. He sees his future with Joan. I want this. I want that. And then when he finally takes on the bad guys, you realize that he wasn't, as you say, he wasn't running because he's scared. He's running because if you challenge him, he will kick your ass so hard. And the tortures that he puts the bad guys through, it's like night and day. How you have this character who's so frail and emotive, and then this other character who's just so cold and can be heartless.
It's that scene where he imagines a future with Joan. That's the deathbed. That's what my dad said. He not actually on his deathbed, but when he was very ill, he asked, "Is everyone safe?"
Oh man, it's powerful, man. It's powerful.
And I think we're straight from the book for the last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And it's such an honor to have done that, to be able to have got that on screen.
It's an honor to watch it. It is. It's when people talk about British science fiction and they say Doctor Who and they think rubber monsters and the wobbly sets, or they talk about Blake 7 and the way they always kept losing the band so they can't teleport out. I mean, it happened every episode. And then you come across modern Who and it tells some of the most poignant stories about emotions. And it's the TARDIS is nice, and the timey-wimey space stuff is nice, and it's all clever. But when you boil down to it, it's this one guy who's just trying to do the right things and get through the day. And
I
absolutely.
I always cry at a Capaldi bit where he's taught, the scene where he says to Clara, "Do you think I
do you think I'm a good person?"
Yeah. No, I know it's Do you think I care for you so little that betraying me would make any difference? It's
Oh man, goosebumps, man. Oh,
yeah.
Anyway, we could talk about Doctor Who for another. I spoke to a young lady who had a book out. I can't remember her name. The book's great, and she's a huge Whovian. So, is that still the word? Do still people say Whovian?
Well, I mean, I don't mind. I mean, I know a lot of people take umbrage at Whovian and think it's American because for some reason British Who fans have a thing about America. I don't know.
This is the whole Trekkers thing. Right. If he was also a massive Doctor Who fan, and I could do a pod for 2 hours on Doctor Who. I absolutely could. So maybe I'll invite you both on and we'll just like go nuts about Doctor Who. Right, run out of time. So let's look through the links again. There you go. You can check out Paul's socials on there. Check that out. If you want to have a look at the first issue of Conan On, you can check it out at the Popverse website. I'll show you that in 2 seconds through the wonders of technology. Ta-da! And you get to see the lovely art in there as well. Remind me of your artist again, please, Paul.
Marika Cresta.
Cool. Excellent. And you've got the first pages there. You'll be able to have a look through that and see how it tickles your fancy, as it were. And of course, who killed Nessie? Well, only the intern knows for sure. Maybe you can find out as well if you back the book. It's there. And
on Zoop.
And there is the link for that as well. There you go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know they say things like you should never meet your heroes, but I've got to say, you have been an absolute charming gentleman. Thank you so much for spending the time and letting me gush over your work and listen to your stories.
It's my feet of clay, you see.
I'm just like, I'm flabbergasted. I have absolutely been looking forward to this pod, and you have absolutely delivered. Thank you so much. Next time I'm in Thought Bubble, I will buy you a cup of coffee, my friend.
I look forward to that.
Or something stronger at the party, who knows? There you go. That's it for this episode. Paul, thanks again so much. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows. You saw the trailer for it earlier. It was the Crisis in the Toyverse. If you like comics of a certain vintage, check out the Old Timers Comic Book Show. Their new show coming up will be about Valiant. There you go, a Valiant special. So if you like your XOs and your Harbingers and your Shadow Man, then check that out for sure. For all you DC fans, it's the Definitive Crusade. And for you Marvel fans, it's the No Prize Podcast, where the guys will be talking about creator rights, as well as the new X-Men 97 cartoon. What more could you want? Paul, what could you want? A Doctor Who special. You'll have to get that arranged, for sure. You've been an absolute star. Thank you so much. I've been your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes. And as always, adios.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.shop, all about comic pop culture.